Hey guys, welcome back to another 3D printing video, and today we're going to be looking at the TwoTrees Sapphire Plus. This is a CoreXY printer, and not only that, it's a pretty large format. So in this video we're going to unbox it, set it up, and do some printing. Hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Let's get started. Alright guys, so I'm pretty excited about this printer because there's not too many CoreXY printers out there, and this is also a large format CoreXY, so this really makes it quite a compelling package, and I'm really looking forward to see how well it does. So this is the box that it comes in. It's actually quite large. Here are the dimensions, 62 by 52 by 24 centimeters. And on the shipping label, it says 16 kilograms, which is about 35 pounds or so. So yeah, quite a heavy box. All right, so let's go ahead and open it up and see what we got. All right, so right on the top, we got black soft foam. So everything looks very well protected. We got our manual, which I really appreciate when companies include this because it makes it much nicer and a better experience overall. There's also a quality control checklist. So yeah, very nice manual, very well laid out with step-by-step assembly here. So yeah, and as you guys can see, we will have to assemble a few pieces, but it shouldn't be too bad. So here it looks like we have the insulation foam for the bed, and we'll install this later. All right, so I'm just gonna pull out some of these pieces here. So this is the whole upper portion of the printer. We can see that it's already pre-assembled and everything is put together here. So this is really nice. If you've never put an CoreXY machine before, these belts could be a little bit intimidating, but I definitely like how they have this already all pre-assembled, so that's nice. And also we have a really heavy duty one-piece kind of steel here, so yeah, nicely built. All right, so here we have the heated bed. It does say 24 volts, and this is, I think, a 300 by 300. So yeah, very good size. All right, so here it looks like we have a lot of smaller pieces. So we have the dual gear extruder, 200 grams of PLA filament on a roll. So it is kind of small, but it does come with a little bit. Lots of packets of parts, and they're all labeled with these numbers. So that's really nice. That should help us find the right parts that we need as we're assembling. Also, we got a bag of tools and some snippers, zip ties, Allen wrenches, things like that. Our USB cable to connect from the printer to the computer, and our AC power cord. So here it looks like we have some frame pieces. All right, and so these are, looks like the bed frames where the bed mounts to. The brass fittings are already installed. Over here we got our rails, and they're also labeled here. This is number 11. They are linear and feel very nice and smooth. And there are 2 of them for each side. Also, we get some trim pieces to clean up the wires into the channels. All right, so looks like we're done with this layer. Let's go ahead and pull it out. Well, actually, I don't think we're done because it feels kind of heavy. Okay, yeah, there's still something under here that I didn't notice, and it's the glass bed. And actually, guys, it's the perforated kind that's kind of like the Ultra Base with the little dimples, where when it heats up, it sticks, and then when it cools off, the models pop right off. So yeah, very nice. And on the other side is just plain glass. So you could use either side if you wanted to. All right, so now we are done with this layer. Pull it out. And we got a lot more pieces under here. You guys probably can't see it too well, but yeah, more parts here, channels. And yeah, the detail I'm noticing here is they got a nice side, and then they got the normal side here. So yeah, lots of attention to detail on the parts, and everything feels pretty high quality. So we got 4 of these. These are the corners of the printer. And then we got 2 of the smaller ones. And we also have the lead screw. Well, actually 2 lead screws. So this is a dual Z-axis setup. So let's go ahead and pull this layer off. And below that we have the base. And the hot end is tethered to it. Nothing too fancy or special, but we do have dual axial cooling fans. Small heat break fan. So yeah, and that's the heat break there. No silicone sock on the heat block. Maybe doesn't need it, but yeah. Pretty normal, typical looking hot end, and quite small. And this is a good thing and not very heavy, because since this is a CoreXY machine, you want your hot end to be as light as possible, because this is going to help you a lot with printing fast, and this printer should be capable of that. All right, so let's pull out the base, and this is what it looks like, completely enclosed. And yeah, pretty nice. It's definitely large, guys. And that appears like that's everything that's in the box. I like how everything is packed, making the box not too huge for the size printer that this is. All right, so let's start with the base here. And the first thing I want to do is flip it around and let's see what's underneath. Maybe we can take a little peek there. And actually looking at this, I think we might be starting from the bottom anyways, because we don't have any kind of feet under here yet. So there's 4 little bolts that we need to take off to pop this cover off. Let's go ahead and grab our tools. It did include some really nice snippers, a PTFE tubing. It is quite long, so I guess it's going to go from the extruder to the hot end. A bunch of little zip ties, and we're probably going to need these. 4 gig micro SD card with a USB adapter, and our Allen wrenches, which also include a little small screwdriver, flathead, and it looks like an extra 0.4 nozzle. So let's grab the wrench that we need, and we'll go ahead and take these little bolts out. All right, and our cover should pop right off. And right off the bat, guys, I see a couple of really interesting things here. The first thing is that the 2 Z-axis motors are actually tethered underneath with a belt. Wow, that's pretty unique and actually quite ingenious. This is definitely forward thinking, and I'd love to see this kind of innovation here. And this is a great idea because you want the 2 motors to be in sync together as the bed goes up and down. Now, the other thing that's quite interesting is we have wires here, looks like motor wires, that are just left on the inside. So technically you will have to pop off the cover either way, because you got to get these wires out. I don't know if this is just my situation, but yeah. So it looks like this one here will go through this hole. Technically, you probably could have grabbed them through here anyways, because it is nearby. And this one here, I imagine, would go to this hole here, and we'll go underneath all these power wires. So hopefully that is correct. And speaking of power wires, we can see everything is routed and crimped nicely. This is the input power here. It is fused on and off switch. We got a little fan here in the back. You guys just randomly blowing into the case. Another bigger fan here that blows on the board, and the board is actually accessible from the other side. That's actually a pretty good idea because you can get to your main board without taking the whole printer apart on the bottom. And we'll look at that once we flip it around. And this is our display board, and you guys can see that it is maker base. And the power supply looks pretty generic. Stats are on the other end here. We can't see them, but it does look like the 350 watt 24 volt type. All right, well, I really like how everything's put together, and I'm really pleased to see the belt here underneath for the dual Z-axis synchronization. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this cover back on. Well, I just noticed. Okay, so there's another, yeah, make sure you guys got all your cables coming out of the bottom here. I got another one here that I need to push through here. So, but yeah, anyways, check, make sure all your wires are coming out of it. Also, guys, while we're under here, don't forget to check the voltage setting on your power supply. So mine's already set to what I need it, which is 115, but you want to go ahead and do that while you're under here to make sure you're set on the right voltage. And we're going to go ahead and grab the installation manual and see what our first step is. Well, guys, it's me from the future, and building this thing, I realized that the Z-axis in-stop switch plug, which is the smaller one, it has a Z on it, needs to be coming out of here, not the back, because now I can't change it and I have to fix that. I'd have to take everything back apart. So run this little Z-axis wire with a small plug out the center here on one of the Z-axis rails that's on the right side. All right, so I got the cover back on. Let's go ahead and see what the first step is. By the way, these are all the parameters of the printer, the parts list. So step 1 is installing the feet. So yeah, so the part that's really confusing right off the bat is on the baggie here, it says 16, but this is step 1. So I don't know if the numbers here mean anything or not, but in any case, I find it kind of odd. So each foot has a bolt already in it. All we got to do is install them on the 4 corners. Simple enough. And you don't want to over tighten this. This is rubber. Just, you know, snug it up a bit. It should be fine. There is a little metal washer inside the foot, so it's not, you know, just squishes it out. You can tighten it pretty nicely, but All right, so that was step 1, and step 2 is actually a pretty big one here. It's installing all these frame pieces, and they kind of show you here the detail where all the bolts go and what kind of bolts we need. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty big step here on step 2. So we're going to need the 4 corners. Then we're also going to need these 2 smaller 2020s. And also we're going to need the 2 linear rails channels, and this is for the Z-axis. And we'll also need bolts, which are in here, and honestly I'm confused at this point why they even put numbers. Either I don't understand. I would rather them put the actual bolt size on here instead of some random number, unless, let's see. Okay, I get it now. So on the parts list here, all of them are labeled according to what they are. So the rubber feet were 16, so you have to go back to the parts list to see what number means what, and then you can tell. So this 20 bag is the M5 1618. So yeah, I guess that works, but I would have preferred that they just wrote the actual part, what it is, on the bag instead of these numbers. But in any case, we can figure it out what we need. So this makes it more confusing and harder, but so we're just gonna look for what we need. M5 16s, 8 of those. So M5 16s, so we actually have to find where they are here on the parts list. That is number 20, so that's bag 20. So we're gonna need 8 of those from bag 20, and then we need 12 M5 10s, and that's actually bag 19. So we need 12 from the 19 and 8 from the 20. All right, so let's flip our base back around. And let's see if we can't figure out what goes where. So all these 2040s appear to be the same, and they're gonna go on each corner of the printer. And we do have wires coming out, so we need to watch out for that. So yeah, we're just gonna simply insert it with the nice face, the flat look, not like this, but like this, towards the front. And we'll grab another one. On that side, and then on the back side, the nice part is going to go towards the back, so this side towards the front. Again, watch out for your little wires, and that one on the very edge there. So next we're going to grab our rails, and you can see how there's a little bit of a bigger space here than on the top, so that's going to be our bottom, and it doesn't matter which side you put it on, but it's going to go down like this. So let's put this one here, and the other one on the other side. So it's probably a little hard to see, guys, but yeah, you can see we stuck all our channels just into the base, so nothing is tightened yet. They're all moving around. Before we start tightening everything, I want to make sure everything's going to fit as it should together. And sure enough, guys, I already found an issue. Now the issue is actually quite subtle, and you don't really notice that it is until you get to the next frame piece, which goes from this end to the other end. But yeah, you can see this little cutout right here. So this cutout, it accommodates this bolt here on the 2020 channel that actually inserts into it. So there's a few things to watch out for. So the cutout has to line up completely with this frame, so it has to be on the outside. So this one actually belongs back here. So we're gonna switch it. So we have our cutout right here towards the outside. So on this channel, our cutout is here, so this one belongs on the back over there. So yeah, this is definitely like a puzzle here. This one actually belongs over here, because if I flip it around, it's going to be on the outside. And this one here was upside down. We can flip it back around, put it in like this. So it's a little confusing maybe, but it'll make a lot of sense once you grab this channel. And again, here we have to look for the top also. The top has the wallowed out holes, because if you look on that side, they're not wallowed out, but this side you can see they're wallowed out, so the bolts can go through. So this is actually our top like this, and these bolts, they stay in there. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten mine up because one of them was loose, just so they're not rattling around. But yeah, so with the wallowed part up and the nice face out towards the outside of the printer, this should line up. I guess I'll have to spin this thing around a bit. Hard to fit everything in, but yeah, everything should just fit right in, just like that. But this one doesn't, because it's actually for the other side. And the reason for that is because our holes here are not centered, they're a little bit offset. So this one actually goes on that side, and our other one here goes to this side. So just like we talked about, and it should all just kind of clip together, and you guys can see that it does. So now we can install all of our hardware all around it. Hopefully that made sense, guys. So we got a total of 4 bolts, 2 here and then 2 underneath. So the ones on the side are number 20 bag, and the 2 underneath are bag 19. They're the ones that have the flat head. So what I'm going to do on mine is just go off the edge of the table, and it's kind of hanging there, and I can actually get under there and start the bolt. So at this point, it's kind of your choice if you want to go ahead and tighten everything. I'm not gonna tighten anything too hard because I wanna put everything on, and then once everything or the whole box is built, then we'll tighten everything. Right now, I'll just start them all. And so it's all holding good, but it could still move around, you know, if it's forced to. And then I'll go back and tighten every bolt once we're done building the whole frame. So yeah, at this point, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go and do the same thing on all the other 3 corners. Put 2 bolts here and 2 underneath. Now for this middle channel, again, we're gonna use the same 19 bolts. And I'm gonna go ahead and go off the table again. And then just from underneath, I'll be able to start it up. Simple as that. So yeah guys, not too hard, just a little complicated on where every channel goes, but the bolts are quite simple. So all the flat ones go underneath, and the number 20 round headed ones go all the corners on the outside and the top. I'm gonna go ahead and put all the bolts in, and then we'll go to the next step. All right, so I got all of my bolts into the frame from the bottom, but one thing that I did wrong is putting these bolts from the packet 20 in here, because that's not what goes in there. Because on step 3, it shows us that the bolts are 530, which are the packet 17. So yeah, that's what they look like. They're long and have a different kind of head. So that shouldn't be too hard to exchange there. Again, I'm not tightening everything. I'm just barely tightening it, because I'm gonna come back and tighten everything up after we set our top, and everything should line up pretty nicely. All right, and so that was step 3. So for step 4, we're gonna set the whole top assembly on the frame on the top. So yeah, we're looking at the front of it here, and that's the back. So we're gonna grab the top frame with the logo pointing to the front. Just gonna set it right down, just like that. So yeah, it literally just sits down onto the channels. And again, we're using the same bolt, the packet 20 for the sides, and the 19, the flatheads, for the top. So let's do one corner together here. So the flat bolts go on the top, and then 2 of these from bag 20. So yeah, now I'm gonna go around and do each corner the same way as this one. All right guys, so this is what we got so far. So yeah, I went ahead and went back and tightened all of these bolts throughout the whole frame. And so now we got a really nice solid structure. Now, if you think that, you know, you're not gonna remember to go back and tighten everything, you can go ahead and tighten as you go. I just like to do it this way because everything kind of sits in its place and then you tighten it up. But yeah, so far everything's going good. Let's go ahead and go to the next step. So for step 5, we're gonna be installing the corners to brace these channels here. And the bag we need is 14, which includes all of our hardware. By the way, these are aluminum, so very nicely machined. So what we need to do is grab a bolt, put it through the hole, and then on the other side, put a little T-nut. And we need to do this on both of the holes. And the T-nut goes in this way, like this. So basically the way T-nuts work, if you've never used them, it's quite confusing. What they do is they just go inside the channel, and then when you tighten them up, they turn and they lock in into the channel. So it's gonna go into these corners. So we're gonna line up the T-nuts where they drop in there. And then we're gonna grab our wrench, and we're literally gonna start tightening the bolt, and that should turn the T-nut. Sure enough, it did, and it locks it in. Same thing for this side. But yeah, if it's not working, just loosen it and then tighten it again. And keep the little corner mount here all lined up, and it should work just fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that corner and then the other side here, and we'll be done with this step. All right, so our corners are on. Let's go to step 6, which will be installing the bed support brackets that go here on our linear rail bearings. So we're gonna need the number 18 baggie and the 2 bed frames. They look identical, so I don't think it matters which one goes where. And they're literally gonna line up with the 4 holes to the bearing. All right, so we're gonna tighten these up nice and snug. And that's it. One of our frame pieces is on, and we're gonna do the same thing on this side here. All right, so both of them are on, and they're really smooth and solid. So for the next step, which is step 7, we're gonna be installing the lead screws. And so this is quite a simple process. We're gonna go from the top, and we're literally just gonna screw the lead screw into the brass bushing by turning it. And then it's gonna go down into the coupler. And at the coupler here, we can see there's a couple little set screws. I'm gonna grab a wrench, and we're gonna tighten them up. And then it's gonna bite into the lead screw. And that should be good right there. And now it's bound. Now remember that underneath they're coupled together between the 2. So you wanna have both of the frames at the same level. And so probably the best thing to do is lower this one down all the way first. It might be a good idea to go ahead and measure it off from here to the bottom, so they're exactly the same. Grab our second lead screw, and we're gonna go down. And so once we confirm that these are level, we can go ahead and tighten these set screws, and that'll be it for step 7. All right, so I think all mine is pretty level and good, and I got it all tightened. So they now travel together, as you guys can see, and that's because of that belt underneath between the two Z-axis motors. So I definitely like this design. Very smart of them to do it this way. Now, I don't know if you guys can hear, but there's like a little bit of a squeaky sound, and that's because there's no lubrication on the lead screws at all. So it's probably a good idea to put some grease on it if you have some. If you don't have any kind of grease at all, or even motor oil, you can use cooking oil as your last resort. All right, so that was step 7. Now we go to step 8, which is going to be the support brackets for the lead screws. And that's going to be bag 13. So we got some hardware, which is little bolts with some T-nuts, and the 2 brackets, and one of them actually has the end-stop switch. So we're gonna have to put this wherever the Z-axis end-stop switch wiring comes from. But yeah, these are really nice brackets. They're metal with a bearing that the lead screw will go through. So what we need to do is put a bolt through this way, and then a T-nut on the other side, and there's going to be 2 sets on each one. All right, so we're looking at the front of the printer. Let's go ahead and run this all the way up the bed itself so we can see where to put the switch. And by the way, these little black bumpers here, I think they can be removed from the rails, and also on the bottom because it won't be able to go lower. I think these are just to protect the bearing from just flying out of the rail. So there's one thing I want to show you guys that I did make a mistake on, and that doesn't look like I can go back and fix it. So looking at the printer here from the front on this side here, we have this wire which is called the Z with the smaller plug. It's coming out from the back, but where it needs to be coming out is actually from here, from the middle channel to the top. And this is where our bracket with the end stop switch will go for the Z-axis. So hopefully you guys are watching this video before you get this far with your installation, and your wire does need to come from there out the middle instead of the back. So I will insert some short to warn you guys before you get this far. All right, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and grab our bracket with the switch, which is going to be here on the right side. And we're gonna literally set it right over the lead screw. Should fit perfectly. Sure enough, it does. And our little end stop switch is right here. All right, so now we just need to tighten our bolts with the T-nuts. And that should be good right there. Let's see if our little wire will reach. Well, look at that, guys. It actually won't reach. So yeah, it's quite important that you run your wire here on the middle channel out that end. So I'm going to try to figure out how to do that. I'll probably disassemble the connector. That way I can get the wire through the channel at the bottom and then back through the top here in the center. So yeah, hopefully you guys caught that. But in any case, I'm going to take care of that. Let's go ahead and put on the other bracket on the other side. It's basically the same thing here. All right, simple as that. We got both brackets on. So now our lead screws are nice and secured. And let's go ahead and see if our switch switches over there. Sure enough, it does. So everything is working great. Well, I'm pretty happy with everything so far. Let's go ahead and go to our next step, which is 9, and that's going to be installing the aluminum heated bed. So we're going to need the bed itself, but what we need to do, I think, before we install it is actually put the insulation here on in the middle. So you're just going to line it up wherever you think is centered, close enough between these 4 holes there. It's pretty simple. This side here is just a sticker. So we're going to peel it, then stick it, hopefully pretty close to where it needs to go. All right, so that's done. Let's grab our bed hardware, which is going to be bag 8. And this is actually pretty simple installation here. So we have 3 parts for each corner: a bolt, a spring, and then the knob. So the springs we can set over the holes right on the frame, and then we'll grab our aluminum plate and we're going to drop the bolts through the 4 holes. And so with the wires going to the back, we're going to carefully, and you don't have to do it this way, guys, but either way is easier for you. But yeah, now we just can set the bolts right over the springs. Might be easier to do one side and then the other, so whatever's easier or whatever works for you. Yeah, once they all fall through, now we can grab our knobs and turn them on. And so what I like to do is compress the springs about halfway, because from there we can go up or down when we need to when we level the bed later on. So just kind of eyeball them and compress them halfway. So it looks like it's just like when the bolt starts to peek out from the bottom of the knob. So I'll just do that on all 4 of them. So yeah, that looks pretty good right there. And our bed is installed. Very cool. So yeah, we're making some progress, guys. All right, so for the next part, we're gonna be installing the extruder assembly to the top rail here. And we are looking at the back of the printer. This is the front. So let's go ahead and grab it. Now what you're gonna do is you're gonna go from the back. And the reason you wanna go from the back up like this, because we're gonna combine this with our PTFE tubing later. So yeah, you're running on the outside of the printer over the top. We already have some pre-installed bolts that we gotta take out. And then we're gonna line up the hot end. Yeah, it just simply goes right there, lines up. And just like that, we are done. Now we can go ahead, if we wanted to, I guess, install this little limit switch here, and it literally goes right here. So I think it doesn't really matter which way it goes. It still works, but I'm gonna put it like this. Seems to be the way it wants to be. So we're gonna use our tiny little provided screwdriver that came with the printer to take these little bolts out. And then we're gonna put them through the limit switch and then screw them back on. This is definitely a little tedious. Be careful because all these wires are pretty fragile. They're small, you can break them off. And simple as that, our X-axis limit switch is on. Well guys, it's me from the future, and I totally don't know how, but I installed this whole hot end backwards. It's actually supposed to be pointing the other way. And I did find it funny that back was pointing toward the front. So in any case, I didn't realize it till I was farther down here. And so we need to reverse this. So it's not too hard, obviously. So don't do like I did and install this thing backwards. So thankfully, this is a pretty easy fix here. Now there is like this little cutout here, and actually that's where the PTFE tubing is going to go through. I guess that should have been a little bit more obvious there, but in any case, it's not a big deal. So now we just need to insert the tube as it goes down into the heat break there. And that should be good right there. So now I'm just going to zip tie it all together here, but that's definitely the right way now. So yeah, if you guys see the hot end backwards during the assembly video, just know that I did install it backwards, and before powering on, I did flip it around. So for step 11, we're gonna have to install the extruder, and it actually goes right here on the back corner if you're looking at the printer from the front on the left side. So, but we're looking at the back right now, but it does go right here. And this is where your main wire to the hot end should be coming from. Move it here so you guys can see a little better. Yeah, our extruder is number 4, and this is a dual geared extruder. And everything is pre-assembled with the motor, so that's pretty nice. But we will need to install a couple things here. The first thing is this spring here on the bolt with a washer, and that's literally going to go through the arm, and you're just going to tighten that up a bit. So this is the tension on the extruder itself, so about halfway on the spring works pretty good, so maybe a little less actually. And the next part is we're going to need to put 2 bolts and T-nuts on one of these side brackets. So we're going to use the outer one here on the edge. It's going to go like this kind of. We're going to put a bolt and a T-nut, and just like that. And so that's just going to go right into the rail here. And basically we can go, you know, as high as we want or as low as we want. So I'm going to probably go all the way up right now. We're pretty close to that. But before we install that, there was a little PTFE tubing, kind of like a guide that goes underneath here, so you can go ahead and put that in there. And so your filament would feed in here and then go through the extruder and then out the PTFE tubing into the hot end. So I'm gonna say right here, probably pretty close, and just like that, it's nice and solid. And I think maybe we should go ahead and put our PTFE tubing in. So that's gonna go from here to the hot end, and it is quite long. Let's see. Let's get this thing as far as possible. So yeah, I guess it's about the right length. So we're gonna insert it into the extruder. And then, so you guys can see that, the other end into the hot end coupler. So you want to push this one down really far deep as it goes. And it might help twisting it around a bit as you go down. So once you hit bottom, that should be it. So that looks like it's good for me. Wiring can go together with the PTFE tubing, and we can kind of zip tie it all together as it goes together here wiring. So, but we do have one more thing to install here, which is the spool holder, and it's the bag 15. And it's just a tiny little plastic holder. Again, we got a couple bolts and T-nuts, same thing we've been doing. And so we're gonna install it somewhere here on the channel, and the smooth part of this holder goes up. But we're gonna need to know how far off the ground. So if you have a full-size spool, okay, so probably about right here would be good. And on this printer, there's plenty of room here between the extruder and the holder, so that's good right there. So our spool will go right here, and then our filament will feed into the extruder here and out to the hot end. So that's pretty much everything for the assembly. Let's go ahead and start plugging everything in. So we're over here on this corner here. This is the front, and we're looking to plug in the X-axis motor, which the wire comes out from the bottom here, and it's going to travel inside the channel. So we're going to tuck it in there. and then it's going to plug in into the motor. So make sure, you know, your wiring all lines up. This one says X and the motor's X. Plug it in, put our wire in the channel, and then if you guys remember, we had these little trim pieces, and that's actually where they go into the channel here to hold the wiring. So they're a little short, but they do help out with the wire staying in the channel where it needs to be. So this one's good here. I'm going to do the Y here in the back, same way. Install the trim. So let's move the printer around. So there is a little Y plug right here. So we're just going to find the other end, which also says Y on it, and we'll plug them together just like that. And we'll try to run this wire inside the channel. And so there's only a few more things to plug in. We have the bed, which has got the main power wires, and then the temperature sensor. And we can see that these line up here, pretty simple. And this is our temperature sensor, which has a B on it, I guess for bed. So yeah, that was simple enough. And then we got two more wires here, and this is actually to the extruder, which one of them is for the motor, and the other one I think is for a filament detector, which my printer didn't seem like it came with one. But yeah, the larger one goes into the motor here, pretty straightforward, just like that. And I guess if you did have the filament detector, it'll plug into here. So I guess we won't be using that. But yeah, now we just need to kind of organize all our wires. Now there is one more wire that I haven't connected, and it's the Z-axis end-stop switch wire, which is right here, which I haven't rerouted it through the middle. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and then tidy up all the wires here. They did also include a little bracket here that goes somewhere over here that holds the PTFE tubing and this main wire. So yeah, pretty much we're just doing wire organization. And I also need to go ahead and grease my elite screws. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do all that, and then we'll take a closer look at this thing. All right, so I tidied everything up, and I went ahead and ran my Z-axis wire here where it's supposed to go, so everything's good there. Now there's one more thing that we need to do, and that is install our glass build surface. There is a layer on top of the aluminum. We can go ahead and peel that off and set the glass on top of the aluminum. Now the bed did come with these brackets here, and they are metal, so they're quite interesting, and they actually are used to clamp it down. Now there is a few pieces to it. There's no instructions on how they go together, but I think I figured it out. So there is a little rubber foot, and that actually goes into the bolt like this. So you got like a little rubber foot to press against, and then the set screw screws into the bottom of the bracket, and so the top will go like this, and then the bottom foot will press underneath. And the reason you want the little rubber underneath is because you got the heating element on the aluminum side, and you don't want to ruin that. So you will need a flat screwdriver to tighten that up. So yeah, but simple as that. That's how this thing clips on, and we got 4 of them. So this is definitely an interesting way to do it. To be honest though, I think I just prefer clips, but I guess these do look a little nicer. They seem to protrude into the bed quite a bit, so hopefully that's not gonna mess with our build volume. And plus the way it mounts, it's not very easy to just pull off the glass plate. You know, if you wanted to, you'd have to unscrew each one, so maybe not the best design choice. But with this type of bed, we technically shouldn't be taking it on and off much anyways. So we haven't actually opened this door yet to look at the motherboard or the main board of the printer. So let's go ahead and do that. And we'll take a peek at it. And this is quite nice that they made it where you can access it from the top. That way, if you did want to, you know, get into it, you can pretty easily. All right, this is what we see. So everything's nicely laid out. It is a MakerBase Robin Nano version 1.2 board. We got heat sinks on all the stepper drivers, pretty large ones actually. Go ahead and pull one out. And we do have the TMC 2225, so yeah, should be nice and silent. And looks like it does have the ARM processor. So yeah, pretty modern board that's easy to get to here right on top of the printer. All right, so I'm gonna put the cover back on, and we'll take a quick look at all the details of the printer. All right, so the Sapphire Plus is a pretty large printer. You guys can see it's filling up my desk here pretty well, and it is quite tall also. So it is definitely a large format printer, but I do like the overall design. It looks quite industrial and rugged. So on the very top here, we can see we have the Sapphire Plus logo. We got an all metal frame, and the upper portion here is one piece, so it's very solid, the whole printer. So we can see we got linear rails on all the axes, so the X, the Y on both sides, and also dual Z linear rails too, so definitely nice to see. And because this is a CoreXY machine, you guys can see there's a lot of belts going everywhere. And again, I'm happy that they pre-installed this because it could be, you know, quite complicated for someone that doesn't understand this system. So the hot end has 2 parts cooling fans and they're axial. Small cooling fan here in the middle for the heat break. The heat block is not insulated. I do like how they included the dual extruder drive. These are really nice and very reliable in pushing the filament through. It goes right through the tubes here into the hot end. And below that, we do have the spool holder. It's pretty simple, but does the job. I do like this large glass bed, which has the ultra base type coating on it. So when it heats up, it should stick very well, and it cools, pops right off. So the only issue with that is if you do lose power and it cools off, the model could pop off. But other than that, these usually are great. Not too crazy about the mounting here. Normal clips would have been better and more simpler. I absolutely love the dual Z-axis lead screws with the 2 motors on the bottom that are tethered together with a belt, so that's a great design. We can see the bottom is nice and clean with access to the main board. We got a nice 3.5 inch display logo. Going to the left side of the printer, we got the micro SD card slot and the USB slot to connect to your computer. And these are all the specs of the printer. As you can see, we got 300 by 300 by 330 build volume. Going to the right side of the printer, got a pretty nice TwoTrees logo here. And to the back, we got a cooling fan with the on and off switch and the input power that is fused. Also like how the printer has these squishy rubber feet on 4 corners. And the back is pretty clean with not too much going on back here. And we were able to run all the wires nice and clean, so everything looks pretty tidy. So yeah, overall very solid looking printer, and I think the CoreXY fans out there will definitely love something like this. All right, so for the next part, let's go ahead and power on the printer. I got the cord plugged in. Hit the power button. All right, so it's booting up. Got the logo coming up there. And there it goes. First thing I'm noticing is the language is not in English, it's in Chinese. So I think we should be able to change this somewhere. Let's see, maybe settings. Okay, probably this one here. No, maybe this one here. Okay, that's it. And you guys can see all the languages that are available. We need English, and now we're good to go. So yeah, we got tools, settings, and printing. So in the tools, we got preheat, extrusion, move, home, leveling, filament, and more. PID adjustment, and I guess that's it. So in settings, we got Wi-Fi, fan, about, continue, machine settings, motor off, language, and back. And then we got the print, which will read the micro SD card on the side there. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is go to tools and move, or home should I say, and then we're gonna click on all. And that should move all of our axes to the home position. So I'm gonna go ahead and click all. All right, so the X is moving. That works. Now the Y. Okay. And now we can see the Z going down and back up. And it's very quiet. I can't hear anything as it's moving, and it is kind of moving slow, but it is going up. So it should stop before it hopefully hits the nozzle there on the bed. And sure enough, looks like it is just right, I think. Okay. I'm not sure why, but it did it twice and then went back down. So with this, we just verified that everything works, so that's good. So for the next part, let's go ahead and go to leveling. So if we click on leveling here, you guys can see that this is an assistant leveling, which we have the 4 corners and then the center. And so this is going to assist us to each corner, and we're going to manually level it. And before we start leveling, we do need to preheat the bed. And the reason for that is because we want it to expand to where it's going to be while it's printing and when we're leveling, so we get the right tolerance between the nozzle and the bed. You can preheat the nozzle also if you want. I guess we can go ahead and do that. Do a 220 on the nozzle and 80, maybe 70 here on the bed. And that's going to ensure that we have the correct gap between the nozzle and the bed. So you're going to need some kind of sheet of paper. I'm just going to use a Post-it note, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the first corner over here. Okay, it looks like it's homing itself first, which takes a while. Seems like a little unnecessary to, you know, double home the Z, but I guess it just wants to be sure. All right, so it's moving to the first corner. So we're gonna grab our Post-it note and we're gonna put it underneath between the nozzle and the bed. And so that's too tight right there for sure. So we're gonna loosen it with these knobs, or should I say tighten it so we can loosen it. And there we go. Good right there. Now we can go to the next corner. All right, so this is tight too. Now it's pretty good. Go to the third corner. And so yeah, manually we're going to keep going around and adjusting each corner. So this one actually was pretty close. I actually needed to get a little tighter. And then our last corner over there, and that is way too tight. So basically the idea here is we're going to go around and around at least 3 or 4 times until we get this really close. And then we'll do the center and confirm that it's good. And that'll be it. And you definitely want to go around quite a few times because this is probably the most important part of the whole process here of 3D printing is you want to get your bed as level as possible. All right, so now we need to go to the center and see what that looks like. And that's a little tight. So the way we need to adjust is we're going to turn each knob to lower the bed the same amount. So I'm going to turn it about 1/4 on each knob to tighten it so it can go down. And now we should be good. So yeah, that feels just right there. All right, so everything should be good. I'm going to go ahead and home it again. And while we do that, let's go ahead and grab some filament. I'm going to use this gray to start off with. So you do want to cut off your filament on an angle so it can feed through easier. So we're going to set it on our spool holder and then feed it to the extruder. And we're simply going to release the arm so we can go through it. And then I'm going to go ahead and push it all the way through myself. So it's going to go through the tube into the hot end. And as I push it through, you should be able to see it coming out there. There it goes. So let's go ahead and grab our micro SD card, which is a 4 gig, and we're going to plug it in on the side of the printer. It probably goes upside down. No, right side up actually. So let's go to the main menu here, and then we'll click on printing, and it says no files. That's interesting. All right, well, I guess we're gonna have to jump to the computer and see if there's anything on there. So I plugged in the card in the computer, and it does look like there's a zip file in here that we have to unzip, and that's probably where everything is. All right, so we got a folder in Chinese letters, PDFs and other files. So there is a test file here, and we have a rose looks like, and then what a square, so 20 by 20. So we got a couple test files we can print. All right, so now if we click printing, we can see we have folders, and they're not completely coming up like I would thought they would. Let's see, I think it's that one. Okay, test files. Let's start with the box, the 20 by 20 by 20. So we'll go ahead and click on it. It's gonna ask us to print. We're gonna say confirm. And there it goes, so it started. So here we have the preview, which nothing's there, the percentage, the time that passed, the z-axis position at the moment, hot end temperature, the bed temperature, the fan speed. Then we got pause, stop, and options. Click on options. We can control the temperature, the fan, the filament, the speed. We got power options here, which I think with this one, it has auto. I guess let's put it on auto, see what happens. Maybe it turns off after it's done. But I don't know if it can do that because it doesn't have any other buttons here, but I guess we'll see. And we also have baby steps here, so that's cool. All right, so it looks like it's starting. Let me get you guys closer. So hopefully we're good on the level. It does move really slow, which is interesting. Okay, it looks like it's purging something. Okay, now it's going normal. All right, so our level looks actually perfect. I'm going to get you guys even closer. But yeah, it looks good. Looks like everything is just right. The level's right on the first layer. All right, well, that's good news. And also the printer itself is very quiet. The only noise you really hear is the fans. So I'm going to bring my microphone in. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's ultra quiet. The movements are pretty quiet, but the printer itself still has some moderate sound. It's mostly just fans. All right, so I'm just gonna let it print out. Everything looks good. There appears to be no issues, and you guys can see 10% done there. So yeah, it's going pretty quick. This is not a very long print, so I'm gonna go ahead and print actually the other test print that came with it also, and we'll check out how they come out. All right, so both of the prints are done, and you guys can see the screen is off. It actually turns itself off, like dims it, so you just have to touch it to power it back on. So it's asking us what we want to do next, reprint it or confirm to finish. So yeah, I guess that could be a good feature where the screen is not constantly on. But yeah, we can see we got the cube and this pretty huge print here, which is some kind of rose looks like. But looking at the cube here first, it all looks pretty good. So this is a 20 by 20 cube. I guess we can measure it. Let's grab our calipers. So I don't really know the axes, but in any case, we'll just see if it's close to 20. So yeah, pretty close within tolerance. Yeah, not too bad. It's actually really close. And the Z is pretty good too. So yeah, very accurate actually. And the layers seem to go down very nicely overall. But we're going to print another cube, which is a calibration cube with a filament that will be able to see a little better. So let's go ahead and check out this flower. Now the bed hasn't cooled off completely. It's still a little warm. Let's see if we can pull it off. And this is a pretty large print, so it's stuck on there pretty well. Yeah, we might have to wait a little longer for this to cool off completely. Now this had clips. You could pull it off quickly and set the glass on something cool like a table, and it'll cool off much faster than sitting on the aluminum here. But then again, it's too much trouble to do that with these kind of clips here. So it's been about 10 minutes and pretty much cooled off, but it is a little bit warm. See if I can't persuade it a little bit by lifting it. Okay, there it goes. So it's definitely coming up now. There we go. So theoretically it should come off way easier than that once it's completely cool, but because it's not completely cool, it still wants to stick pretty good. But yeah, that wasn't too bad, and with all the surface area that we had, that actually came off relatively easy. So I have a feeling it might have stuck a little better than we anticipated, but I guess that's definitely better than it popping off while printing, because this was a very long print. And it looks pretty good. Now there is some stringing going on, especially here on top where there's a lot of retraction, so whoever sliced this did not do a good job there. But that can be cleaned up, obviously, just a little bit of work to do it. But one thing I am noticing, pretty noticeable, apart from the stringing, is these layer lines. So there's a little bit of layering here and there. You guys can probably see it. In certain places it's a lot more heavy than others. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a perfect print. So I'm not sure exactly what caused that layering, but I think I have an idea, because as it was printing, I heard the spool over there kind of making like drastic movements, and I think what's going on is the filament's not wound very well and it's binding, and it has to pull it out kind of from itself. Well, let me just show you guys. Yeah, maybe you can see how it's kind of tangled in there. So yeah, that might have caused some of our layering there, because I did hear this thing struggle here and there once in a while trying to pull out the filament. In any case, overall, it did succeed and it finished and it looks decent. Because we didn't slice this, I don't really know any parameters, and retraction, as you can see, is not where it needs to be. So what we're gonna do next is I wanna print some benchmarks, which usually I do a benchy and a calibration cube, which we have this cube here, but we're gonna print another one so we can see the layers a little better. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll see what those look like. All right, so I printed a calibration cube and 3 benchies. And the reason there's 3 of them is because I did a speed test. So we're gonna take a closer look at that in a second. Let's go ahead and look at the calibration cube. So since this is a CoreXY machine, it doesn't really matter the axis so much, but in any case, we'll still look at them obviously. So this is what the X looks like. So just the CoreXY naturally, doesn't have one motor or one motion. There's 2 motors creating a motion. So the diagonal motion is actually from corner to corner. Let's say on this cube is only one motor works, but whenever it goes on a flat line here, 2 motors are actually activated. In any case, you guys can see that it looks really nice. So there's nothing weird, no ringing really, or ghosting or anything strange. So very nice cube. So on the Y we do have a little more. We can see the stitch here. It looks like maybe that's what that is. Something there, but yeah, a little bit more ringing, but no ghosting looks like. So very nice. The X wall here and the Y wall there. The top looks excellent, and the bottom. So yeah, guys, you can see that whenever it's sliced well, the printer seems to do an excellent job. And I just used my standard Ender 3 profile for this, which is 50 millimeters a second, 0.2 layer height, 200 on the nozzle, and 55 on the bed it was. So yeah, and it sticks very well and pops right off once it cools off. So yeah, the cube here really shows that the printer is capable. But I think what really impressed me are these benchies. So we got the first benchy here is normal speed at 50 millimeters, and then we got 75 millimeters a second, And the last one here is at 100 millimeters a second. I think it could probably do even quicker than that according to these results, but we'll see here in a second the differences between them. Let's go ahead and look at the 50 millimeters a second here. So this is the typical speed, and you guys can see it turned out really good. And this is very impressive. So this is a CoreXY machine, and I don't know if I've ever seen this nice of a layer bonding on a CoreX machine that I've ever tested. So yeah, this is actually beautiful results here for the Sapphire Plus. We do have a slit here on the box in the back, so the overhangs are also very nice. So it seems like a very good balance between all the parameters here. And on the top, the circle is definitely round. Not much ringing or ghosting. There's usually quite a bit of ghosting around these windows here. Pretty much nothing, so yeah, pretty impressive. At 50 millimeters a second for this Benchy. But what about 75 millimeters? Well, it pretty much looks the same. So there's a little bit more vibrations, but overall still very solid at the speed of 75. And here we have 100 millimeters a second for the speed. So all the other parameters are still the same. And you guys can see there's a little bit more vibrations now. Starting to see a little ghosting around the windows. It's not bad. So yeah, overall at 100, it's still pretty good. Here we have a little closer look at all three of them. So we got 50, 75, and 100. So yeah, pretty impressive. And as you can see, there's not a huge difference between the three. Obviously the 100 is a little more rough looking, but overall very, very doable considering the speeds. And the time that it took to print these prints was 2 hours for the 50 millimeters a second, 1 hour and 30 minutes for the 75, and a flat 1 hour for the 100 millimeters a second. So very good results for this Benchy, and this is one of the strong points of a CoreXY machine, is that is able to do higher speed printing. In any case, guys, I'm pretty pleased with how these turned out. So the benchmarks look great, and I know the cube is accurate because we measured the other one. So for the next part, I'm going to go ahead and print out some more stuff, and we'll take a closer look at that. Alright guys, so we printed a few more models here, and I have to say overall this printer does very well. And I like how everything just works and there's no fiddling around with anything. So we've seen the Benchies, we've seen the first prints we did, but let's go ahead and look at the prints that I sliced myself in Cura. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the machine so I can be a little bit quieter. And all the prints that I sliced were all actually sliced in an Ender 3 profile, which I use for everything. Very standard, nothing unique or advanced about it, so keep that in mind. It can be tweaked farther, so these are just kind of rough results of what the printer puts out. So everything is printed at 50 millimeters a second, 0.2 layer height, at 200 on the nozzle, and 55 temperature on the bed. So the bed's been performing very well. Once it cools, the prints pop off real easy, but it does have to cool all the way. So let's go ahead and start with the tree frog. So I like to print this print because it's a pretty delicate print. There's a lot of curves and some retractions, and you guys can see it turned out pretty good overall. Got a nice shine to it. All the layers are bonding nicely. And these little fingers, you know, are pretty detailed there, so everything turned out pretty good. Cooling is great under here. You guys can see that's actually excellent. Now, one of my feet did break off here as I was pulling it off, so I wasn't so careful. I didn't wait all the way till it cools, and I tried to pull it off and I broke one of his feet. But yeah, retraction looks like it's pretty decent. And by the way, that was at 8.5 millimeters, so I did have to bump it up quite a bit for it not to string, and it's still stringing a bit. So that's the disadvantage of this type of setup, is the PTFE tubing is very long, and so the retractions are kind of, I would say, okay, but not great. But inherently with this large format, there's no avoiding that. So now, one print I always like to print is this bearing, and this just shows, you know, if the printer is capable of good tolerances, because this is a functional part. So if I hold the middle and spin it, you guys can see it's like a spinning bearing. And this turned out great. So not all printers actually do this well. This one actually has very good tolerances. There's practically no looseness on the inside, but still very smooth on the spinning. So yeah, this is definitely the better bearings that I normally get. So that's the flat spot onto the bed. And yeah, the layers are sitting very nicely. So yeah, very impressive with this print here. So here we have kind of like a shark. And what's unique about this thing is it's got multiple pieces. It turned out very good overall. There is some stringing again, pretty minor. It's obviously cleanable. So what's cool about this print is there's many links that combine together as it prints and then makes this kind of flexible little toy shark. But if you look at the layers here, they are sitting very nicely. So as far as the print quality itself, it actually looks really good. especially being a 0.2 layer height. Very nicely fused together. So here on the face of the shark, we can kind of see that one of his teeth kind of messed up, like it fell or broke loose or something. The mouth is supposed to be functional, but I haven't pried it open yet. I'm not sure. I guess let's go ahead and try it. Get it to open maybe. Okay, so I think it is open. Okay, there we go. It did open. Look at that. Yeah, that wasn't actually too bad. So yeah, except for that tooth getting bit, other than that, this print is very successful. And we also printed a little Squirtle, and this is, I guess, a turtle mixed with a squirrel, I guess. What I like about this print is that how well the layers went down. Very nice and uniform and very clean, actually. So this is actually a pretty impressive print here overall and looks very good. So yeah, this printer does a great job of putting the layers down. Now, the last two prints that I always like to print is an astronaut and a spaceship. So let's take a look at the astronaut. So the astronaut didn't turn out as good as normal. This is the larger size of it. So it does look good overall. The layers are all sitting well, but there is some kind of weird like blobs on it or something, and not completely. You can see kind of around this helmet. So I'm not sure if that's just something I did wrong, or the slicing maybe, and it was only on this print, which is interesting. So, or maybe it was the filament, but in any case, overall it turned out good. Just that little bit of blobbing, but yeah, you can see that we don't have any kind of ringing or artifacting around on the front here, which normally happens around that logo there at the M. Yeah, overall very nice except for the blobs. And the surface area that we stuck onto was just the bottom of his shoe here, and it's not very much, and the bed stuck very well as usual. No issues there, and then pop right off. And if we look here underneath on the arms, we can see that the cooling is very decent and there's not very large drooping. And here also this incline is pretty clean. So for the last print, we got the spaceship. So this is in spiralized mode. It's one layer all the way around. There's a few layers on the bottom to stick to the bed, and then it's all one layer up. So it's hollow completely. And this is the full height of 330 millimeters tall. So you guys can kind of tell how much you can print here. But yeah, this thing turned out really nice in this copper silky filament, and you can see the reflections. The layers are just sitting beautifully. There's a little bit of vibrations here. Very clean on these two sides. So overall, very, very nice. And as we go up, we can look at those windows. There's practically nothing weird going on, and usually there's a bunch of weird things going on in these windows. So yeah, pretty impressive. And you guys can see that G right there. This thing is usually all ringing and ghosting, but it's pretty much perfect. Now, as we go up here, we can see that we did have an issue. There's like an opening here. And this probably has something to do with the dual axes leads. Because the couplers here are flexible, meaning they can stretch up and down. Sometimes the bind makes it flex just a little bit, where one corner is a little higher than the other. And usually this happens here. So whenever it's not super even. So I'm not sure exactly what happened here. There might have been a small bind somewhere. Because of the tether underneath, that should have been pretty much avoided. But because the couplers are able to flex, I wish they would have used just hard couplers instead of those flexible ones, so it does not, end up doing this. And because they have the tether belt on the bottom, I feel like the hard couplers would have been perfect for this situation. But in any case, looking past that part, we can see the print is very clean, and this part is just perfection right here. So yeah, it's very accurate and very nice. And you guys can see the cooling is also great because we did not melt. Normally we start melting around this area. So we haven't melted, and the ball was successful. No melting on the ball. So yeah, great cooling, excellent layer adhesion. Pretty accurate here on the spiralized mode with one layer all the way around. So yeah, guys, as you can see, I'm pretty impressed with this printer overall. And I think as far as CoreXY printers go, this is probably one of the better ones that I've tried, and I mean, I'm quite impressed with it. I love how they got the Z axes tethered on the bottom. It's a great design there. The build volume is excellent, of 300 by 300 by 330. The print quality coming out of this printer is very nice. We got linear rails on all of the axes, which is very impressive and high grade. We got the ultra base style glass bed, which is very flat and makes printing easy because it grabs when it's hot and prints pop off when it cools off. And obviously the bed is heated and also insulated, as we know that we put that insulation on the bottom. The whole frame design of this printer is extremely solid. There's one large piece here on the top. I like how it's all assembled and ready to go. So that makes the CoreXY part of it very enjoyable. We got the dual gear extruder, which is very nice for reliability. We also get silent steppers all the way around, which makes this printer very quiet, but it's not silent silent because fans are obviously still heard. So yeah, overall I think this printer is a delight, especially for someone that's a CoreXY fan, or if you want to get into CoreXY machines. TwoTrees did a really great job with the Sapphire Plus. So not only did we get a large build volume, but we get a very nice construction with high quality components, touchscreen display with a great UI. It's not hard to use. Now the assembling of it is a little bit challenging, so if you're not too inclined, this might not be perfect for you, but you know, if you've had a printer or two and you've assembled a few of them, you know, this should not be too hard for you to get started with. So overall, if you've been wanting a good CoreXY machine, I think this is finally one here that is worth a look at, because it's definitely doing everything right and performs very well with speed and print quality. So if you guys are interested in this machine, I'll have some links in the description. Check it out. And if you enjoyed this video, then hit that like button. And if you want to see more videos, I have a pretty long playlist with a bunch of different printers that I reviewed, so check that out. And if you enjoy videos like this, then stay tuned. Got more 3D printing videos coming up. So as always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.